Hey, it's me. So today, as you can tell from the title, I have my second guest here on Nish Commentary. This is Terry Howling Eagle Gardner. Welcome, Terry.
Hello.
And I have invited Terry to come and speak on their experience being two-spirit. So we don't have any concrete schedule on how to carry out this conversation. We're just going to get started and see where it takes us. I don't know if you have seen a previous video of Nish Commentary with my first guest I invited. Their name is Jordan. They spoke on their experience being a Black Native. I'll go ahead and link that. Wait, where does it show up? I don't think I can point where it shows up. Point your left hand up.
Just praying you get the right one going.
Yep, right there. It'll be linked right there.
When my finger's off screen, that's when you say it's right there, huh?
You helped me link a card. What you did.
My goodness.
And today we're going to talk about two-spirit. So I myself, I am not two-spirit. I identify as a cis woman. I do consider myself androgynous in a way that I don't subscribe to any sort of gender role, but I am not two-spirit. So I don't know if you want to first talk about what you think being two-spirit is, because I know that a lot of people, they don't understand the definition of two-spirit. They might liken it to non-binary when it's kind of a different thing.
Well, where I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. So where I live, two-spirit, from what I've got from my elders, is it's not so much like traditionally, it wasn't so much the way you identified with your gender or your sexuality. It's the way you carried yourself and the spirits that you presented every day. And two-spirit is the very umbrella term that we use nowadays to identify within the sexuality spectrum for LGBTQ plus and all those letters. But here, the way I was explained is it means it's the way you carry yourself and your teachings and your identity. So I identify as a gay male, and not just because, and I don't identify, and I was always told that when you identify as two-spirit, it's not even supposed to be about what you're into. It's about the way you view the world and the way you carry your medicines. And I see things from a woman's point of view and a man's point of view. And I mix them together to make an understanding on both levels. So, yeah.
So there's a heavy spiritual element to
some modern natives might consider it a gender identity, while some consider it a gender role or sexual role. It's not technically. Technically, some people might agree depending on their teachings. Everyone's teachings are different. That's why I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying somebody. Because you have to respect everyone had different teachings. And also, different nations had different names. We didn't have that. And actually, I was just watching a video on YouTube about someone who's college educated about two-spirited people. And the names that they got up didn't even mention sexuality or gender. They didn't. They mentioned the person's characteristics and what they represented to their tribe. It was very interesting to watch. And some of the names, I'm just like, I don't even want to try to pronounce that.
Yeah, I think the umbrella term two-spirit came around in like the 90s.
Yeah, 1999, if I'm not mistaken. And it actually came in about in Winnipeg at the Legislative Building. And so it's kind of close to home. But my family always told me, don't identify as two-spirit if you don't feel like you do.
Right.
Or non-native, it doesn't matter, especially for non-natives. Non-natives I've seen use that term very loosely, and it's not technically supposed to be used by people who are non-native, because the role itself is spiritual. It's not the way you just say, oh, I'm gay or I'm lesbian or I'm bi and I'm two-spirit. No, it's not a trend. It's a very sacred spiritual responsibility.
Yeah, and like I mentioned non-binary before, and I feel like a lot of people liken the two, or they think that they're the same thing. But like you said, non-binary is a form of gender. And two-spirit is not necessarily gender. It's like it's within you. It's your spirit encompasses multiple worlds. It's so hard to explain.
Well, it's the thing is, the way I see it is, it should be something that should be discussed intimately with a loved one or a community member who you know is going through those life changes. It's not something that you just bring up in a conversation and be like, "Yo, I'm two-spirit."
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Exactly. Especially since, like you said, there's so many tribes. There's hundreds of tribes. And like our teachings might be different in how people regard what two-spirit is, how to go about it. Our practices are so different. So I think that, and I'll let you explain further on this in a moment. I almost think, sorry, I stumble a lot. Editing is my best friend. I think that a lot of kids or adults, wherever in their communities, they have trouble finding somebody to talk to about these identities, whether they believe that they're a two-spirit or whether they believe they're trans, non-binary, gay, lesbian, bisexual, because there's nobody to really talk to. Because of colonization, we ended up adopting, these dichotomies where you're a man or you're a woman. You have to be straight. You have to be in a hetero relationship, all of that. So in your experience, have you had difficulty finding somebody that you were comfortable to talk to?
Well, actually, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. When I was younger, I was taken into just foster care, but I was very blessed by a creator that I was adopted by two men. So two-spirited things, we didn't have the title for it, obviously, because two-spirit, being gay was more normal than being straight in my house. It was whatever. So, but the communities can be very hard to talk to sometimes. My personal experience, because I have seen myself some either light or somewhat, not extreme, but somewhat mild hostility, especially when kids are identifying as different and they don't have words for it, and they feel, because like you just said, colonization took our culture was very delicate. It was a very delicate but strong culture at the same time. It had a very deep, untold spiritual root in the earth. And our roles were not something that our bodies could comprehend. Our roles were just what the Creator gave us. We had journeys all through life on what we were supposed to do. And so when colonization hit, it did kind of destroy our communities, but what it did is it gave us a rigid sense of right and wrong and acceptable to unacceptable. And when it came to gender, it was no different. You're a man, you had short hair, you dressed up in a suit. If you're a woman, you had long hair, you wore a dress. That was the end of it. Women cooked, cleaned, they were good wives to their husbands. Men did a job, paid the bills, had kids, were a decent father. And even in other communities, that was not the case. Everyone had a different role. It was not just a very black and white, system. We even had different systems in each tribe. So that's why it was changed so dramatically. And for us, it was like, oh my God, like. And actually, I've learned over time that some tribes didn't even have a name for man or woman. They didn't. We didn't really have a lot of names that identified as man or woman. It was what we were defined by our responsibilities. We were given names for what we could contribute, Women are life givers, ceremony keepers, song makers, and everything. And men were hunters, gatherers, protectors, warriors, We had different names, but they were in the languages, so they had different intimate meanings. And it changed everything.
Yeah. And generations of being taught this European view that we have. It's so hard to break out of that. And I don't know. I have a tough time describing these things because I feel like I have a very psychological view of all this. I mean, I don't know if you know, I have a psychology degree.
Yeah,
So
you mentioned that often. Yeah.
when I
Kudos,
think
by the way, it's awesome.
how just like hardwired
Yeah.
people are, these things are literally like hardwired into us. And so it isn't necessarily just a non-native thing to help like non-natives understand what it is, but natives as well.
Yeah.
But I think it might be getting a little better. Okay?
We are. The thing is that every time I see hostility or every time I see prejudice, my aunts always remind me of one big thing that happened to us that created those rigid stereotypes: residential and boarding schools.
Mm-hmm.
When they would send kids off to there, many people don't want to acknowledge those schools, and especially non-natives want to deny those schools all the time. I see it all the time. They want to deny the schools, or they want to deny the cruelty in them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And those schools taught us to be rigid in gender, to be rigid in to kill the Indian. And those schools, a lot of people, everyone's story is different. That's why I try not to I don't try to pinpoint different schools because every school, students had a different experience. But needless to say, they weren't the best education system. So
Right.
And so they taught us that if a man wore a dress, you're either a freak, you're like, it was wrong. And when a woman tried to be a
Wrong
man,
as a joke.
yeah, it was a joke. Like it was, I guess I guess in modern times, you'd be known as a tranny or a drag queen or just someone who wanted to be something else. And it was wrong in their eyes. And to us, it's just like, we have Two-Spirit going back to the beginning. So it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's
I
hard.
mean,
Yeah.
this is their culture, right? And they don't even like people don't even realize that culture is it's a social construction, just like gender, just like race, and it fluctuates, it changes, and it's different throughout the world. So
Mhm.
this dichotomy of male or female, men wear the suits, women wear the dresses, women wear the heels, like if you look back at old Renaissance paintings and whatnot, men were in heels. Men were wearing heels. in Egypt, old ancient Egypt, men wore makeup.
Yep.
And that was So it changes throughout the time. It's different throughout the world, and I don't know how we're stuck in this same male versus female thing in the last couple hundred years. We're just stuck there.
Well, Europe, especially Britain, like the UK area, Britain, France, mostly Europe has in the old 1800s days. I can't speak on facts, but what I've learned over time and from YouTube and from history books and stuff, they had a very patriarchal society. It was all about what men wanted, what men thought. And sometimes if you had a queen, that'd be different. But men had a say in everything in Europe. Everyone knows that. They did. And King James, King Louis, they all had the say. Men had the say. Women didn't even have the women. It was not fair for
anywhere. Yeah.
world for women at all. And they brought that over here. But when they realized that we had a matriarchal society where the women had a say in everything, it was equal.
Yeah, depends on the tribe. There might be tribes where men might have a little more power, or women might have a little more power.
Yeah.
I'm on Anishinaabe, and we shared power in different ways.
Yeah.
But there was always like, women were not oppressed. Like I just realized we are almost 15 minutes into this stream, and we haven't even told the audience what tribe you're from.
Well, let's cut to there then, shall we? Make this okay. So my ancestry, everyone knows I'm as pale as a bag of flour. But I am Mi'kmaq from Elsipogtog First Nation, New Brunswick, from my mother's side. My father is Métis or mixed, and he doesn't have. I'm going to speak very loosely on his side because he's got a lot of family ancestry to catch up on. But as far as we know, he has Anishinaabe, Cree, and Blackfoot heritage. It's not documented, so I don't want anyone hounding me over it. Yeah, I am mixed. I also have German, Russian, Dutch, Irish, and Scottish, and a little tiny bit of French ancestry. So I'm mixed, and that's my ancestry. And but I am obviously enrolled with my mom's side, though.
Okay.
So for y'all who's watching the video, that's what my ancestry is. I also have a Native American tag on my YouTube as well. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you just reminded me when I just did the tag too, and there were so many questions that were like, "What are your tribes? Which one do you identify with the most?" And I'm like, "I'm just Ojibwe through and through." Like,
yeah, it's the biggest thing that I got judged on my YouTube for that video was people said, "How can a white boy be Native?"
Oh yeah.
And
I get that all the time too.
I thought to myself, you know what? I have no time. I just delete negative comments these days. I do. Don't have time for them. And honestly, like you just actually mentioned, we're almost 20 minutes into this video and we haven't even talked about powwows yet. So we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so on my YouTube, I did a Native American tag. And I talked about powwows and my struggles in the powwow circle. And Two-Spirit identity with the powwow circle. And let's get into that so we don't make this a 3-hour video.
Yes. So you want to tell them what your dance category is?
Okay, here's my little story. You're gonna be surprised about this too, because I don't really tell people this. Okay. I started off as 2 slightly different categories. So when I first started, around the time I started powwow dancing, my biological mother died. She did. She died of health issues. That's another story for another time. But that's how I started powwow dancing, is I needed to heal. You need your culture to heal, you know? So I started off as men's traditional. I didn't have a bustle, no feathers. I made my little regalia, my outfit, and I made everything. I've been sewing for almost 13 years now, so it's just like I know how to make everything. And didn't feel connected to it in the same way most men do, so I tried grass. My sibling, who was also two-spirited, trans, Jamie, tried to teach me grass. Didn't go out too well. Let's just put it that way. But then I had the regalia to go with it that I made. That was, I used to go to powwow clubs here to learn dancing. And one thing that my family told me is, you're not really meant for that dance when you don't even take your regalia out of the suitcase to practice. Never took it out of the suitcase, not once. Showed it off just for the sewing skill I had, but never put it on. So my aunt looked at me and just like, "Have you ever attempted jingle dress?" I'm like, "But that's only for women. Like, I don't want to, like, I respect women a lot. I do. So I don't want to be touching that field, you know?" So she asked another auntie of mine if it would be okay if I tried it. And at the time, I didn't know what Two-Spirit was. I didn't really come out as Two-Spirit. I was me, you know? So we tried it. She dances I think all the women in my family dance old style jingle. So I did old style jingle for about a year. Did all my own stuff and learned how to beat as soon as I could. And old style jingle, I actually kept tearing my calf muscles dancing old style jingle. Not even during cycle, but just regular dancing.
Yeah.
So I realized it's one of those styles, like, I love it so much, but I'm gonna be hurt. I'm gonna be hurt more times than this dress can heal me if I dance this particular style. So what I did is I said, I'm gonna switch to contemporary. So I did. And within about a year, I watched videos for 20 minutes a day for a year to learn contemporary jingle.
Wow.
And some of the moves were like, oh my God, how the heck do they do that? They look like they're not even touching the ground. So yeah, that's how I started dancing. Is I had hard times healing. And so I dance contemporary jingle now, and I have a video on Instagram of me dancing. And I have videos. I had a video on YouTube, but due to some stupid copyright claims, I took it down.
The music.
Yeah, it was on iTunes.
Yeah.
I wanted. I thought to myself, who the hell can say they own native music? I was so mad. I'm like, just delete it. I don't want anyone biting me in the butt over it.
Was it by a big drum group that might have done it under a record label?
I believe it was from Young Bear.
They might have done it under a record label.
They did. I think they did. And I was very mad because I didn't believe that you could own native music. But I guess I didn't realize that if you sign under a contract label, they kind of do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, dang, I have to delete this now. So I figured maybe I'll just take a video off of YouTube of an actual powwow drum group in a powwow and play that and then do another video. I've been asked to do another video. I procrastinate.
Yeah, same. So, well, that's amazing that your aunt proposed that to you. Like that, I don't know. To me, that might tell me that she might be intuitive of certain things,
Well,
you know?
My aunt has had her own life journeys, and she told me in very good confidence that she does not want to see any members of her family feeling judged or let down or left out because of how they identify. That won't happen for her. So she understands a lot of things very, like you said, intuitively. And actually, I'm going to talk about what happened at a powwow that made me almost quit dancing. So when I was at a powwow, I won't name the person or the powwow out of discretion, but I danced at a powwow. I made a dress overnight. I danced at a powwow. When I got online, another dancer patted my shoulder with her fan and openly scorned me in front of all the other dancers in line. She said that two-spirit people don't exist. It's a made-up thing. And I had absolutely no right being in that dress. I need to take the dress off and get rid of it because I have disrespected the dress by wearing it. My aunt tried to bump her head out and say, hey, like, they're two-spirit, they have every right. And she looked at her and said, I already gave you shit before for, I don't know what the mistakes were. She doesn't even know. But anyway, she's known in the community for being very critical and judgmental.
Mm.
And so I actually left the line holding myself as tight as I could, like emotionally. But when I got to my suitcase, I bawled my eyes out. And I was going to quit. I was packing up. I was going to go. I said, screw the culture. I'm never dancing again. My aunts came up to me and said, don't you dare quit this. Don't you dare. We'll kick your little ass if you quit. They said, we won't allow you to quit because they said, once you start in that dress, you're a role model to other two-spirit youth who might need you in the future. And you can't quit because if you quit, what does that say to them?
Mm-hmm.
You can quit because someone doesn't agree with you. Heck, if we quit for someone who doesn't agree with us, we wouldn't get anywhere in life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I went to a lot of elders. I got a lot of teachings, and I got inducted in the powwow circle by another two-spirit dancer. And ever since then, I have been very strong in the way I carry myself because I was always told if you carry yourself confidently but respectfully, it's hard for people to talk shit about you if you carry yourself in a good way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened. And I have a little bit of, I use this term very loosely because I don't want disrespect people who do have it. I developed a little bit of anxiety/PTSD with it.
Oh, no, totally understandable. Yeah.
And I haven't been at that particular powwow in 4 years. Last year was the first year I've been to that powwow in 4 years, out of fear that that person would be there. But my aunt says, if you ever pass by them, smile with your head held high because you overcame prejudice. It's your job to show the two-spirit youth that no matter what they get thrown in life, they have the community as a backbone.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that you'll ever go back to that powwow again?
I do go back to hell because I've learned over time that it's not about my aunts always say to me, you can have one person not like you or hate on you. Would you rather that person give you fear, or would you rather stand with the people who give you support? One person against a group of people who give you support. Which one's better to focus on?
Especially since support is often it's very silent, whereas criticism can be very loud.
A lot of days, everyone's so used to biting their tongue and keeping their mouth shut. But at the end of the day, if you don't speak up for what you believe in, and you don't act out for how you want to live your life, it's going to be very hard to feel satisfied. Especially when you feel like you have a right to be there more than anybody else, not more than, but as much as anybody else. And being two-spirit in the circle, actually, I'll tell you something. I went to a powwow on a reserve here in Manitoba. It was a weekend powwow, and I was dancing. My first powwow on a reserve. And so I found out the last day I was there that people were talking behind my back. A lot of the women on that reserve were saying that they realized that I was not a woman in the dress, and that they were talking that they should pull me aside and strip me of my outfit right then and there. And so someone who's a friend of my aunt's said that don't worry about them. I've been going around talking to them saying, you know what? Now it's not the time or place to be disrespecting anyone, no matter what you disagree with. It's not your right to be doing that. Just because they're wearing a regalia that you don't agree with does not mean that you got the right to touch them. Mm-hmm. So now modern days, that's called assault. But after that, I felt very insecure. But then I was walking with my aunt back to our tent, and an older traditional woman's dancer looked at me and said, "You know what you said? It's about time you came back to the circle." I'm like, I didn't know who she was talking to. And so she looked at me and says, "Yeah, I'm talking to you." It's about time your people came back in the circle. You've been gone for way too long. Mm-hmm. She says, "We need you. We need you." She says, "Our communities need healing, and you can bring them healing. Whether they want to hear it or not, you're there for healing." And then she kind of gave me a little bit of, I gave it to Bethel for the beautiful words that she had for me. And she said, "Never stop. Never, ever stop." Mm-hmm. And then I gave it to Bethel for the kind words and a small hug. And my auntie says, "No, that's that's an ally right there. That's what we call an ally, someone who supports you." Mm-hmm. But she did say to me something kind of funny. She says, "I see you in the dance arbor kind of walking around as if you're like looking at everybody." She says, your job at a powwow is to not look at everybody the way you do. Your job is to dance. When you're in regalia, you dance. That's what you're there for. And if you're not dancing, why are you on that floor? Mm-hmm. If you're dancing, either sit down or walk off. You're not there to walk around and social. You're there for ceremony. It's a ceremony. So she told me, if I see you walking around there, I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm like, "Yes, ma'am."
Yeah.
It's like, she told me, get my ass going.
I was approached by an elder at a powwow. I think it was on New Year's Eve powwow. And I made this big mistake. I had never received this teaching before. you're not supposed to carry your children in the arena? I had no idea. And he came up to me and he said, look, you can't carry your kid because you're offering your child. Okay. He's like, think of when you carry medicines, when you carry, your fan, your scarf, all these things, whatever you carry is an offering while you're dancing. And if you carry your child, you're offering your child. You're asking for your child to die. And I was like, wow. So like my reaction aside, another thing that he told me is he was like, listen, we didn't always have powwows. We had different feasts and ceremonies and stuff. And powwows sort of derived from colonization and needing to reteach a lot of these ceremonies and these practices. So he's like, so don't feel bad that I came up to you and told you this. It's
Don't feel
okay.
bad shit.
Powwows are where we learn.
He's right though, especially here in where I live, especially in Canada, from what I've been told too. I've been told, especially when women are pregnant, they can't be anywhere near the arbor or in the circle because when they're pregnant, they're offering as well. That's a big teaching here that a lot of people will listen to. And yeah, like you just said, carrying your children. I see a lot of content powwows where that's accepted, but traditional powwows here, that's not accepted. You can't be carrying your child, and you can either, if they're too small, they can watch with a family member, or you have to teach them how to walk. And at first I'm like, okay then, like I'm not a woman and I'm not a parent, so I'm not saying shit. I consider myself, because I do consider myself traditional, but on a modern spectrum.
Yes.
So, I agree with others. I'm just like, there is room for, I was always told, you're allowed to question anything if you don't see it the way we do. But just respect it. If you don't want to live that teaching, don't disrespect it. Just carry it to somebody else who might need it, And it's just, oh my goodness. And yeah, but the way you mentioned that, and also powwows, yes, powwows were what, from what I was told, is powwows came from the Wild Wild West shows. When our culture was considered illegal due to death penalties, and we had to hide.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people know this. The white people, to put it in blunt terms, wanted to see the Indians dance during a time when our culture was illegal and it was considered witchcraft. They wanted to see the men dance. So we slowly started incorporating, but that's when the men's fancy came around. Men's fancy were Buffalo Bill West shows, the men's fancy between the 30s and the 60s. And that's when the women's fancy came around, because women's fancy came directly from men's fancy. It hasn't been around that long. It's a very contemporary, it's the most contemporary form of dance. And anyway, but not many people realize this, but the jingle dress actually came around either as early as the Spanish flu.
Yes.
And I actually learned that in Ojibwe communities, Anishinaabe communities, both in the States and Canada, the jingle dress became a pan-Indian movement where a lot of the women were learning this tradition of healing. And we have different stories everywhere in every community about how the jingle dress came about. So that's a different story for another time. And I saw your video for Bay Mills. I saw one of your jingle dress videos, by the way.
Oh, the one where I was teaching it?
Yeah, I saw I was taught a different spots, but similar story.
They're all pretty much around a sick girl.
Yeah, sick girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, Ojibwe communities were always like, they had that, and then they gave it to the Sioux, who gave it to the Chippewa, who gave it to the Comanche, and all the other nations. And excuse me. And but every tradition, every powwow tradition, the dances, a lot of them come from the Plains natives, the Plains and the nations. Grass dance comes from the plains. Traditional comes from the north, actually. And as far as I know, I could be wrong, but that was explained. And chicken, fancy, they all come from the plains. Jingle comes from the woodland. And yeah, it's just, but you know what? They all came from they all came from everywhere else. And it's just, dancing is healing. You know,
they all started somewhere too. Yeah. Right? They started somewhere and then they were shared. And something that you made me think about when you mentioned fancy dancers, how they were created basically for the white gaze.
Basically.
Not like GAYS.
Yeah.
Like GE.
Yeah, no worries.
And then soon thereafter, it was a woman developed the fancy shawl. And so I kind of likened that thought to you experiencing criticism in the powwow circle from, you know, that woman that didn't like that you were dancing, or those other girls.
Mm-hmm.
The dancers of that time did not like the woman's fancy shawl, because traditional women dancers, they held that shawl folded on their arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when women unfolded it and wrapped it around themselves and danced with it, they hated that. And now it's completely okay. I don't even think a lot of people know that it was frowned upon. So,
well, back then, before they did the shawl, that was controversy. When the women saw that the men danced, they wanted to dance just as fast, because women didn't really dance at the time. There weren't a lot of women dancers at that point in time. But when women saw that, as far as I taught from a good friend of mine who's an old style fancy dancer, shout out to Bernice Cadices. She explained that the women would wear the bustles. They would wear the men's regalias to dance. And as we all know, back then, not okay. Mm-hmm. Especially even before we considered gender norms, to this day, not to this, but back then it was not okay for a woman to wear bustles. And so the elders at the time didn't like the shawl part either. But they said, if you guys want to dance that fast, you can have women's fancy dance. But you'll have to keep up with the men. So women, being as dainty as they are on their feet, have to keep up with the men as fast as they can, and we have to keep in mind, back then women didn't even spin in old style fancy that much.
Mm-hmm. Or really lift the arms up either. They were down.
They wore their buckskin dress and they would dance as fast as they could. Basically, think of it as contemporary jingle, but without spinning. Mm-hmm. And people don't always realize that when women started, they were wearing their buckskin dresses dancing. And the history is just gender norms back then and today still kind of come from our powwow teachings, I find. Even though powwow is still kind of not contemporary, but it's not that old of a tradition. Mm-hmm. But that's not that new either. It's kind of in the middle, you know?
Yeah. And
so, yeah, I do my own beadwork. I do my own sewing. I've been beading for 5 years already. And I did watch your beading videos. And to this day, my beadwork still comes out crooked. I don't know why. Well, not crooked, but Helen comes out bent. I'm like, it always annoys the heck out of me. But when I saw you bead on felt, I was like, oh my God, that felt gets wet.
Yeah. I don't know. I like to call her my auntie, but we're not blood related in the slightest. But my auntie, when she see me doing that, she was like, oh girl, don't. And I was like, well, I was told by another Nish to bead on the felt. She was like, well, at least double it up and then use a stabilizer behind it or whatever. Yeah. It's fine for now. Well, I'm sure we'll have another set by the time it wears down.
Oh yeah, well, knowing this pandemic, you might have all the free time in the world to make another set. So who knows where that goes, right?
Yeah, I know.
I've been making this one, but I'm gonna sell this one. I'm not advertising anybody. But I'm making this one right now.
Wow.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna replace this though and make it all blue because I think it would look better.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm trying to get beadwork done, and I have all this. I got this on Amazon actually, Stitch and Tear.
Oh yeah. Yep.
It's like $15, but you get like almost 10 meters.
Mm-hmm.
And I use it like religiously.
Yeah, the tearaway stuff. And you can draw right on it.
Oh, it's like magic. But yeah, so I'm thinking about doing another jingle dress dancing video. Oh, the way you did crow up in your video. I never saw another jingle dancer dance it that way.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. Actually, I just did an interview with the Pride Winnipeg, who's associated with APTN. And I was asked to do a crow hop, and I actually did it the way you taught it.
Oh, okay.
Actually quite
you never really get to see jingle dress dancers do crow hops. It's always straight or sidestep, and then fancies get straight or crow hop.
But you know what? My favorite style of dancing is technically, like, I've got two. I like straight beat the most, but I am in love with double beat.
Mm-hmm.
I can dance double beat with contemporary jingle any day of the week.
It used to be harder for me, but now, like, I feel like my rhythm has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier for me to dance sidestep now, or double beat, or whatever you want to call it, than it is for straight. Maybe it's just because I'm unfit and like my knees and my ankles are bad, but I still dance anyway.
Yeah, well, I did 3 side steps that day, and I was so out of shape. I legitimately tore both my calf muscles.
Yes, I remember you saying you tore your calf muscles dancing earlier.
I couldn't walk for 4 days.
You couldn't even walk, hey?
Well, if I walked, I'd have to limp like crazy. It would look like oh my goodness, it was terrible.
Last summer, I sprained both of my ankles, and I had to wear a brace on both of them for 2 months.
Yeah, my aunt said that one time she tore her calf muscles to the point where she legitimately was bedbound for a while. And I was told as jingle dress dancers, we should try to incorporate compression socks.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do that. Maybe not so much on like my feet, but my ankles and my knees. Because I've been doing a lot of hiking lately too. There's no powwows right now.
Yeah.
But I've been doing a lot of hiking and I'm still experiencing those problems. So it's definitely not the movements of dancing. It's athletic. I don't think people realize that, especially if they've never danced before. It really is an athletic dance. It's fancy.
And
you gotta work your arms too.
Yeah, with the fully said it's painful too. Like you, I have beaded moccasins, and I am such a bad artist in some ways because I do something that I shouldn't do, and I don't line my beadwork. So that's my leggings, but this is the back. I never line my stuff.
Oh, we'll just spray some glue on it.
Well, what I was gonna do is actually, here's the reason why I didn't line it. Well, one thing is, when I made those leggings, I didn't realize one very important thing. Make sure that they are bigger than the measurements of your calf. So my calves are 13 inches wide. I made them 13 and a half inches wide. So they're very tight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, as you're beading, you're stringing the thread, you're pulling it tight to get your beads to lay flat. It's going to kind of cause your fabric to
shrink.
Yeah. So when you're beading, you're actually, especially if you're beading on a material that isn't that thick, like a canvas or a felt, then you're going to be pulling the fibers closer and get smaller.
Yeah, I realized that. I'm like, well then.
I'm going to thank you for that, because I never really thought to include that in any of my instruction, which I haven't started. I'm trying to get the next video out being the beading thing.
Oh, about the materials that you used?
The next add-on to that, I think
yeah.
we need to teach 2-needle, because that's what I use.
Oh, I do the same thing. I've been doing 2-needle for, oh goodness, since like 2013.
I haven't been doing it that long. It's been like a year for me. I started out most of my regalia with 1 needle and then tried out 2-needle. And I was like, never going back.
I know, that's how I felt. I'm just like, it's like, where have you been all my life? And I also do lazy stitch a little tiny bit. I only do it for fillers, though. I can't do fancy designs with it. I don't have the patience. And 2, I'm not good with, you need a lot of math when it comes to that particular beading style. And I am not good at math.
Yeah, me neither. Guesswork, all guesswork for me.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's about it for the two-spirited aspect from my point of view. I think, honestly, it's just every day. It's just about one thing that my family always said, my elders have always said, very plain and simply, is in order to love the powwow and your culture, you gotta love yourself first. And if you can't love yourself, it's really hard to love anything else, because self-love is the most important. So whether you're a youth or you're an older person, loving yourself is the first step to medicine, So for me, by the way, I love your dress, by the way. I'm actually really jealous of your dress.
Don't be jealous.
I do, because I love that material, because I made a dress out of similar material, but it was very shiny. But like, very well put in. I couldn't agree with you more, and actually I giggled when you said you need to fray block the shit out of it. Couldn't from the truth. You need to fray block the hell out of that fabric, because if you don't, oh god.
All I would have to do is just look at it, and the fibers started.
I know, it's like they peel when you're just looking at it. You're just like, don't go.
You have to dance in that and attach jingles to it, and yeah, you have to. I lined the inside with muslin as well.
Did you see my current dress?
Your what?
The current dress that I made. I'll show you.
Current one. You made another one?
I gained a bit of weight.
Oh, haven't we all? Oh, my septum ring is always crooked. There we go.
So I made this one.
Oh my goodness! That is so pretty. I love how you have ribbons going all the way up, and then on the side it's still the same. Nice on the bottom. I want to add fringe on the bottom of mine.
Yeah, I have an
Oh! Wow.
I can sit down.
Yeah.
And the dress that I have on my bed it doesn't fit me anymore, so I'm not going to display that one. But yeah, I make my own. That's actually with Anishinaabekwe cones. So are mine. My friend is actually the one who, Emily is the one who owns that company.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm friends with her. She's really kind.
That's cool. Yeah.
To this day,
mine are made out of them too. Not the plain ones, the one with the little teepees on them. Yeah,
that's the ones I use. The other ones I have on my other dress are the Missouri River cones.
I don't remember what the other ones of mine are. Isn't Missouri River like one of the best cones out there too?
I've been told, but the only reason I don't use them is because when I crimp the cone, they tend to the paint tends to peel off them. Whereas the Mishimo cones, I love the sound those things have.
McPherson's, that's the one.
Yes.
Those are the ones that my old dress have. And when okay, so one of the first videos on my channel are me removing the old cones and putting new ones on.
That's how I found your channel, actually.
Yeah.
That's how I came across your channel. I watched. I'm like, finally, a jingle dress video I can actually watch.
Yeah, back then I was just completely screwing around. Had no plans to be like a regularly putting out content. But
yeah, no kidding.
yeah. So this was fun. We got
Yeah.
before we end, there's a thought that I had that I really want to get out there for anybody who's watching us and is still sort of naysaying anybody's ability to dance in any kind of category that they want.
Yes.
Switch dancing? I wonder how that lady feels about switch dancing or anybody else. You know, when powwows, they'll have the switch dancing.
Yeah. I have my own views.
Laugh and thinks it's funny. That's okay. That's disrespect, but
yeah. I remember one powwow I went to. There was a switch dance. I personally was not happy because I had nothing against people who want to have fun. But the way I told my aunts is when I bust my ass to get accepted as a jingle dress dancer, and then people do switch dances, I find it is a bit of a mild to small slap in my face a little bit. But I also have to remember, for them, they don't wear the dress every single day. And yeah, there are people on YouTube who say, "Oh, that's not right. Men shouldn't even be wearing that dress, or women shouldn't be wearing that grass outfit." I think to myself, you know what? There's a million things to be worried up in this world, in this lifetime, and someone wearing another opposite gender regalia is not one of them. Don't worry about people. You know, honestly, there actually are. There's my aunt told me that there is a small society of female grass dancers in Canada. So gender norms to us, I don't feel I think that the biggest thing that we could do to colonization to help kids feel at home, to help kids feel accepted, is to remind them that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If a girl wants to wear a grass, let her. If a boy wants to wear a fan shawl or a jingle, let them, because they're finding out who they are.
mm-hmm.
Our own spirits have no gender. It's just an essence.
And you can't force a dance category on somebody, even if it's still like my girls, they are almost 6 and one is 4. And I've made them both shawls, and I don't think they want a shawl dance. Every time they go out in the arena, they never want to take their shawls with them and, you know, dance in them. They much prefer just being without the shawls. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, are you not meant to be a shawl dancer? So
the way I see it is, I try not to I try not to tell parents how to raise their kids, but the way I see it is, let your kids explore. Make them an outfit for each category if you feel the desire to help them find out who they are. Because even if they don't identify as Two-Spirit, they should be allowed to express themselves, because that's the way our people were back then. And it's just like, that's my biggest message to parents, is let your kids be themselves, you know? Because kids are innocent as almighty hell. They have no sense of gender responsibility. There shouldn't be any, you know? And hell, we let kids dress up on like plays and stuff as whoever they want. Not saying it's the same thing, but it's the same concept of letting them be explorative. And by doing so, you're encouraging a generation. Now, see, there's a difference between being people who are being free and respectful. Then there's the people who demand gender norms and demand respect for how they identify. When you demand things like that, it loses respect, because that's when you ask for special treatment. That's my view. And I have people in my family who do identify by those gender roles. Non-binary, trans, or whatever. Let people accept you in their own time, and that's when you'll get the respect you're looking for. But people can't be forced to think. History, if anything, history has showed us forceful thinking is not the way to go. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Implementing roles and responsibilities and ideologies is not the way to go. However, having a supportive system in your life is the only way you're going to find yourself, especially for little kids. And that's all I'm going to say for that.
It's a good ending thought. We're approaching an hour.
I know. Trust me, I'm looking at it too.
Oh, you can. Yeah, you can see it. That little red.
And we're almost there, folks. Announcer.
All right. So we'll get that housekeeping out of the way. So Terry here has a YouTube right here, Howling Eagle Partner. I'll of course link all of the links in the description. So go check that out. Go check out their YouTube. Also Facebook if you want to follow them on there. I think you're most active on Instagram, Arya?
I'm active on Instagram the most, yeah, because I post there all the time, and it's more. You can pick and choose who you have on there. Yeah, you can also block them if they're inappropriate, which I agree with too.
On your Instagram, you might expect a Jingle Dress video to come up soon. Yeah. So
I'm doing the same thing. I'm gonna be doing a lot more powwow oriented stuff. More, I miss it. You know, this pandemic has really shown me that you need your culture as a backbone. You know.
Yes. Yes. I've been missing powwows, sweats, gatherings, all of it. I've been missing way too much.
And all that jazz. Anyway, it was fun to be on here, and it was actually quite an honor. It really was. I follow you all the time, and I am subscribed to Chelsea's channel, and hers was the first video I found on Jingle Dress Dancing at the time. So kudos to you for that. And all the topics that you talk about are very inspirational and very conversation motivating, and they're very good topics, especially with your blood quantum thing. Thank you for putting that video up, because I deal with that. I'm sure you deal with that. I deal with that since I was born, basically. And thank you for putting it up, because you're one of the very few YouTubers that I know, native ones, that actually have the guts to talk about this stuff the way you do, and you're not afraid to get nitty gritty about it. And you're very educated in it, which is
I do well on Twitter. No.
You're very educated. Fantastic.
Well, thank you for that, and Jimmy, much for coming on the channel too and speaking about your experience. You'll have to come on again.
Yes.
We can talk about beating or whatever you want.
Circle. Beating circle.
Yes.
Anyway.
All right. Well, everybody check out Howling Eagle, Terry Gardner, whichever you want to call them. And yeah.
See y'all.
Obama P. Guaman.